Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome you to the webinar series organized by the BASL Seminars Committee 2021-2022. This webinar marks a historic milestone, being the 175th webinar across 5 webinar series, and will be the final webinar of the webinar series organized by the present Seminars Committee. Tracing back its journey, the webinars initially began in 2020 during the lockdowns as part of the BASL's effort to ensure that while we were socially distanced, we were digitally connected. Since the first webinar being streamed on the 7th of May 2020, there were 5 series of webinars conducted. The English webinar series was conducted every Saturday at 5:30 p.m. and has now concluded 71 webinars. Then we had the Sinhala webinar series on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. and which has completed 42 webinars. The Tamil webinar series were held on Thursday at 7 p.m. and will be reaching 23. The 4th series, that is the Professional, Personal and Career Development webinar series, completes 29 webinars today, and the 5th webinar series concluded 10, making up the 175 webinars now held. Webinars of this nature allow for enhancement of personal skills and proficiency, and engaging in continuing professional development ensures that both academic and practical qualifications do not become outdated or obsolete. It is undoubtedly no easy feat organizing webinars of this caliber, and is brought to you with the combined efforts of numerous persons. The BASL webinar series, being the brainchild of our dynamic secretary of the BASL, Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, was conducted last year under his office as secretary, and this year is organized by the Seminars Committee of the BASL, also chaired by Mr. Amarasuriya, with the convener, Assistant Secretary Mr. Pasinda Silva, and the co-conveners, Mr. Pandula Wanniyarachchi, Mr. Oshan Uberatna, Ms. Anne Devananda, and Ms. Nikini Mapitigama. Before we proceed with today's interesting topic, however, I would like to invite Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, the Secretary of the BASL and the Chairman of the Seminars Committee, to share his thoughts on reaching 175 webinars.
Thank you, Shania. Very warm welcome to all of you this evening to this 175th webinar and the final webinar for 2021-2022 of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. When we launched this webinar series year before last in May 2020, then BASL President Mr. Kalinga Indathissa said that it was a historic day for the BASL. Today, 22 months down the line, I believe we have reached yet another historic day for the BASL when we reach the completion of 175 webinars. It was no easy task completing these 175 webinars now, held 5 times weekly, as Shania mentioned, and conducted in all 3 languages, English, Sinhala and Tamil, and of course the 2 further series, the Personal, Professional and Career Development series, and the Beyond Code Practice series. And we could not have achieved this success if not for the contribution and support of close to 400 resource persons we had. I must also make special mention of the support I received from BASL President, Mr. Salih Piris, President's Council, who was with us, and of course, past President, Mr. Kalinga Indathissa, President's Council, and the management committees of both last year and this year, and our Assistant Secretary, Mr. Pasindu Silva, and Ms. Anne Devananda, who supported the series from the very inception. In addition, we had the energetic involvement and support of Mr. Pandula Wanniyarachchi, Ms. Oshan Uberatna, and Ms. Nikini Mapitigama, for the co-conveners of the Seminars Committee this year. Thank you also to Mrs. Indika Nagaratna, Mrs. Nalini Manatunga, and the Women Lawyers Professional and Career Development Committee for organizing together with the Seminars Committee the alternate Sunday webinar. And thanks also goes out especially to Mr. B. Puvidaran, President's Council, for all the guidance with the Tamil webinar series. I must also recognize and thank the many compeers we have had, all of who are young attorneys at law. Also to our Saranga, Shani and CEO Surani of the BASL staff for all the support and assistance provided. I don't want to take any further time as we have an enthralling webinar to look forward to. and they are to a panel of leading ladies in the legal sphere, but I will only make some concluding remarks. These webinars have been organized entirely at the BASL. We did not seek or rely on any external help. And 175 webinars down the line, the success of the webinars can be summed up under two heads. Firstly, we have been able to reach out successfully to our entire membership on a regular basis, which we did not do before. Also, we have now, through this series, been able to provide our membership with a non-stop source of continuing education, which is something very close to my heart. Even though there was an additional workload as a result of these webinars, from the sentiments and feedback we have received from the membership, I know how much it has benefited so many, and this is what makes me happy. And I'm confident we will see the benefits of these webinars in the years to come in our profession. Thank you to everyone. Over to you, Shania.
Thank you, sir. This is surely thanks to the team for having the will and finding the way to help us continue our professional learning. I would now like to invite Mr. Salia Peris, President's Council, the President of the BASL, to share his thoughts on reaching this remarkable milestone.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me thank the seminars committee for the services it has rendered to our membership over the last 2 years in organizing these webinars. We now have as Rajiv mentioned, we have 5 series of webinars, and especially we have webinars in all 3 languages. And I think this is very important, and because especially during the lockdown and also during other times where in the times of other crises, it is important that these webinars continue and that our members are linked digitally. So thank you, Rajiv. I think I must also make very special mention of Rajiv because this is his, I think, the final webinar as Secretary of the BASL. He relinquishes office in 2 days, and I must thank him for the services which he has rendered towards the Bar Association and the membership. And I think this is a very good example of how a secretary, Rajiv is a very good example of how a secretary could work and serve the membership. May I also today say that we are honored by the presence of Justice Murudhu Fernando, Professor Savitri Gunasekara, Ms. Indika Demuni de Silva, the Solicitor General, and Ms. Chamantha Unambua. And I do hope that today's webinar on your journey would be an example to the female members of our profession, and that they would be inspired by your journey in the legal profession and, of course, in academia. So thank you very much for accepting our invitation to participate in this webinar, and we look forward to listening to you about your journey to the top. Thank you.
Thank you for those very valuable words, sir. Reaching the pinnacle is what any career-minded person aspires to. The American author John Maxwell opined that one doesn't rise to the pinnacle of success without developing the right set of attitudes and habits. Well, keeping this in mind, we are today in the virtual presence of an eminent panel of speakers who know the way, go the way, and today are here to show the way by speaking to us on today's topic, Celebrated Journeys Reaching the Pinnacle, and share with us their long and hard journeys before arriving at the destination of the pinnacle. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to welcome our distinguished panel for this evening. Our first panelist today is Justice Murudhu Fernando, President's Counsel. Justice Murudhu Fernando assumed office as Judge of the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka in March 2018. Prior to this, she served as Senior Additional Solicitor General in the Attorney General's Department for over 30 years. After passing out from Sri Lanka Law College, she took oaths as an attorney at law in 1983. She was appointed as President's Counsel in 2014. She obtained her LLB from the University of Colombo and LLM from King's College of the University of London, specializing in business law. Whilst serving in the department, she was attached to the Civil Division and appeared in the courts of first instance and the appellate courts. Her expertise in the fields of foreign loans, financing and investment law, trade, shipping and intellectual property, as well as banking, commerce and air law. She has represented Sri Lanka before many forums and brought into the Supreme Court her expertise, which is showcased through the numerous judgments she has delivered. Our second panelist for this evening is Emeritus Professor of Law of University of Colombo, Savitri Gunasekara. She was formerly Professor of Law and Vice Chancellor, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka, and is a member of the Expert Committee Treaty Body monitoring the UN Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women from 1999 to 2002. A member of the several regional, national, and international bodies on women's issues, she has held fellowships in universities in the US and the UK. Professor Gunasekara has contributed to the advocacy and law reform initiatives in Sri Lanka and has also acted as a consultant for several international agencies such as UNICEF, ILO, WHO, and UNIFEM, working on law and human rights projects, particularly in the Asian region. She was also a member of the Editorial Advisory Committee, UN Secretary General's Study on Violence Against Children, and chairperson of the External Forum on Gender of the Asian Development Bank. She was a member of the Board of Trustees, United Nations Trust Fund for Victims of Torture. She has published widely on family law, women and children's rights, human rights law, and development issues. She was also a winner of the Fukuoka Asian Culture International Award in 2008. Our next panelist for this evening is Honorable Indika Demuni de Silva, President's Counsel and Solicitor General. Mrs. Indika Demuni de Silva commenced her legal education at Sri Lanka Law College. After passing the final examination with honours, she was admitted to the bar as an attorney at law of the Supreme Court in 1988. She is an alumna of King's College London and the University of London, graduating with a Master of Laws degree with merit in International Business Law. Upon joining the Attorney General's Department as an acting State's Counsel in 1989, Mrs. Demuni de Silva steadily rose within its ranks until her elevation to the office of Solicitor General in 2021. She took silk as a President's Counsel and was called to the Inner Bar in 2016. Although Mrs. Demuni de Silva commenced her career at the Attorney General's Department in the Criminal Division, conducting prosecutions in original courts across the country, it is in the Civil Division that she counts the longest tenure of service. Given the wide expertise of Mrs. Demuni de Silva, she has represented the government of Sri Lanka at numerous international negotiations and engaged in drafting of international protocols. She has also served in committees relating to administration of justice, legislation, and constitutional law. She is a recipient of the Presidential Scholarship awarded to state officers by the government of Sri Lanka, as well as scholarships awarded by a number of local and international agencies, through which she has been afforded many opportunities for foreign training and study. Mrs. Demuni de Silva has served as a visiting lecturer and examiner in the subjects of commercial law and carriage of goods by sea. Our final panelist for this evening is Mrs. Tamantha Veerakone Unambuwa. Having graduated from the Colombo Law Faculty in 1985 and taking oaths as an attorney at law in 1986, she was a junior to Dr. Colvin R. de Silva and to her own father, Mr. Batty Veerakone. To date, she counts 36 years at the unofficial bar. She appears as senior counsel in fundamental rights matters in the Supreme Court, writ applications in the Court of Appeal, commercial and corporate disputes in the Commercial High Court, land, matrimonial, and other civil law matters in the original and appellate courts, and industrial and labor disputes in the labor tribunals and appellate courts. Her practice covers both courts in Colombo and outstation, and in terms of alternate dispute resolution, she appears in arbitration proceedings as counsel and also functions as an arbitrator. Further to the above, she has contributed towards law reform in her capacity as a member of the advisory committee to review the family law. She was co-chairperson of the Committee on Professional Career Development of Women Lawyers of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka from 2019 to 2020. She has also been a resource person in workshops and seminars relating to family law and industrial law organized by the BASL. And last, our moderator for this evening, Ms. Shani Machado. She holds a Bachelor of Laws with honors from the University of London and a Master's in Law with merit with specialization in commercial law, also from the University of London. She was called to the English bar in 1997 from Lincoln's Inn and was admitted as an attorney at law in 1998. Ms. Machado is attached to the chambers of Ms. Faiz Mustafa, President's Counsel, and has also served in the chambers of Mr. D.S. Vijay Singha, President's Counsel. She has extensive experience in the field of public law and has appeared in the appellate courts both as a junior and on her own. We would like to remind our participants today, if you have any questions, you may use the Q&A chat box to send in your questions. Ms. Machado, over to you.
Thank you, Sharia. Good evening, everyone. In the month of March, we celebrate and pay tribute to women who have excelled in various fields. And in this final webinar, we have 4 extraordinary and distinguished ladies who have reached the pinnacle in the legal sphere. I will begin this session by posing the first question to Her Ladyship, Justice Murthu Fernando. Justice Fernando?
Yes, to Shani.
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening to you.
What made you choose law, madam? What inspired to follow up? What inspired you to choose law, madam?
Well, if I may say it in a gist, it's not by choice, but sheer coincidence. Well, after I did my GCE A-level exams, that was in the science stream, and you know at that time, and even as at today, admission to university is very hard, especially when you come from Colombo. It's extremely hard. So maybe, and yet for all, and we knew that it will not be that easy to enter the university. So whilst I was in school and just after my A-levels, maybe my family background or maybe my father, he was looking for all areas as to which I should go. And somebody has told him that there is the Sri Lanka Law College. We do not come from a legal background. So somebody, a known person has told that there is a place called Sri Lanka Law College where you could enter with your A-level results. And mind you, I applied to Sri Lanka Law College pending results. Pending A-level results, I tendered my application to Sri Lanka Law College just after I finished my A-level exams. So I passed my exams, I passed my with sufficient results. Although I did not enter university, I was able to pursue my career at the law college. And maybe that was one reason, applying pending results, I became one of the youngest in the batch at Sri Lanka Law College. So as I told you, it's sheer coincidence. And even at law college, it was a matter of, I was also pursuing other disciplines. I was following a course in accountancy. Just after university, you do not know where to go. So I was following a course in accountancy, not knowing exactly where the future was leading me. So whilst there, I kind of was doing those exams also. And that is how I came to started studying law. But I did enjoy, I must say, I did really enjoy. I was not into that much of extracurricular activities at law college, these politics and student camp unions and games and all that stuff. Maybe I did my work, I did my studies, and I did this quiz programs. Those days, there were quiz programs that were hosted. I participated in those, and I think I should pay tribute to Mr. Gomindasri, my industrial law lecturer, who started on a moot court for which I did take place. So that may be one of the first things that I did as getting kind of accustomed to this legal field by doing moot court. He started the moot courts and we did the moot courts. If I remember right, it was in the month of March that we had those moot courts also. So that's my start in the legal profession. And well, thereafter, as I told you, I followed I did my bachelor's degree, I did my master's degree. Well, I liked it, and I gave up my accountancy, I gave up all the others, and I stuck to the law. So I'm here now, and well, once again, after I took my oaths, or rather, just 3 days prior to my taking oaths, I joined the public sector. I joined the public sector as an assistant secretary to the Law Commission of Sri Lanka. That was 3 days prior to joining the taking oaths on the 18th of March, 18th of November 1983. That was 15th of March, November, I joined the Law Commission as a research officer. So that made me more of than a counsel, more onto the research, and that gave me an insight into what research is. And I was under the guidance of a former Chief Justice, Victor Tennakon, Honorable Victor Tennakon, and Honorable H.W. Tambaya. And I think that foundation I got with regard to the law and the research kept me in good state. And then whilst I was at the Law Commission, I did apply to the Attorney General's department. That is also not that I had a craving to join the department. It was maybe, well, I liked the department for the simple reason that I used to read case law on Justice Alaser's book on these famous criminal trials. Not that I like to do much criminal trials, but yet for all that kept me a liking to the legal field, and that's what brought me to the legal field. So as I told you at the beginning, it's not by choice, not with a family background, no royals in our families, not by choice, but sheer coincidence brought me to law.
Madam. Thank you, madam. You didn't want to join the private bar, madam?
Well, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Actually, that brings me. When I did my apprenticeship, I started my apprenticeship at Julius and Tracy under Mrs. Lina Fernando, one of the first lady lawyers, and she was a senior partner at Julius and Tracy. And I think she extended a helping hand. Maybe she comes from Morotua, I come from Morotua, maybe that's the reason. She extended a helping hand to me. So I joined the Sri Lanka, Julius and Tracy. And also I did my apprenticeship in criminal law with Mr. Erdly Pereira PC, who was also from Morotua and who was also having his chamber at Morotua. So on Sundays, I used to go and I used to do my apprenticeship also there. But well, with all those things, just as I told you earlier, 3 months prior to my taking 3 days prior, I joined the public sector as a research officer. So that's what brought me to law.
I will return to you later, madam. Next, I will ask Professor Savitri Gunasekara as to why Professor Savitri Gunasekara?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, good evening, madam.
Good evening.
What made you choose a career path in law, madam?
To Shani, I think I'm going to deviate a little bit because following last evening's discussions where you suggested that each one of us give a kind of soundbite on in relation to the theme of this discussion. Can I do that? I would like to do that. Is that possible?
Yes, go ahead, madam.
Yes. So yes. So I want to say thank you very much for this invitation. When I see this panel, I ask myself whether I'm a kind of oddity here because I do not have the vast courtroom and litigation experience that all my other fellow panelists have it. But perhaps the reason I can think of is I have 3-generational intergenerational connectivity to your president, Charlie Pires, and a 3-generation interconnectional interconnectivity to Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, and also through the best school, the best university and educational institution. So perhaps that's why my relevance here. I also want to say that I have accepted this because I really do believe that intergenerational connectivity between the past and the present is very relevant for the legal profession, and especially because as far as the law is concerned, we have to think of what the law was in the past, what the law is in the present, to think of what the law can be in the future. So thank you for this, and thank you for this for the Bar Association for responding in this very dynamic and creative way to the challenges of a post-pandemic environment and organizing this kind of event. When I reflect on the legal profession, it is often said that this is a male-dominated profession. And we don't talk of women lawyers. We don't talk of women doctors. We don't talk of women engineers. We don't talk of women architects. Why then women lawyers? I think there's a reason. There's a reason because there's a lived reality of a male-dominated profession in which women find it difficult to come and reach their full potential. And reflecting on that reality as a lived experience, I think, is important. However, it may surprise you that my journey in the profession has been somewhat different. And in a sense, my journey also reflects the journey of our beloved country in relation to constitutionalism, in relation to law, in relation to governance. And at the end of what I have to say, I would like you to reflect and think, why then and why not now? And what's the way forward? I consider myself, a people of my generation, as the daughters and sons of independence. Our country gave us much. We were beneficiaries of a system of parliamentary democracy, functional public institutions, parliament, good public service, great courts, inspirational for the region. That was our heritage. In addition to that, we were the beneficiaries of the wonderful Kannangara reforms, which gave us access to education, irrespective of class, caste, religion, race. Able to forge bonds of friendship that have lasted a lifetime. We had an educational environment which was rich in probably the most stunning, one of the most stunning universities in the world, and we were able to forge those friendships. We were not therefore exposed to that toxicity of difference in class, caste, race, and religion, which has resulted in such damage to our country, nor the intolerance of pseudo-nationalism. So, in a sense, we were very much a fortunate generation. All this meant that the career path for me was easy. It was a career path. I did not have to address this structured male-dominant environment where I had to climb or crawl my way to the top. On the contrary, I had a wonderful collegiate environment with supportive colleagues in the profession.
a family background which is supportive of every kind of achievement. And later on, in the best of times and the worst of times, inspired by great lawyers in the profession who strengthened the Constitution by broadening the jurisprudence on fundamental and human rights. Many people, including my husband, who then inspired to stay with the law and to understand the meaning and relevance of the law in difficult times. And in that regard, I also had this very collegiate environment of support from friends, colleagues in academia. There was no hierarchy. In fact, I remember we had no concept of yes sir, no sir for authority. And when the chairman of the UGC sent me a note to say, from next week, all members of staff shall come to the university only in a tie, underlined only in a tie. And I sent a minute and said, for implementation, please clarify whether this is within the norms and the law of obscenity. We could do that. That was the environment. And similarly, when I first entered the university as a lecturer, walked into my first examiner's room, the Vice Chancellor articular looked at me and said, and here in me in my Indian sari walking into this room, he looks at me and says, and who, may I ask, are you? At that point, the professor of law didn't say, this is a woman lecturer. He said, this is our lecturer who has just joined the department. And that was how I was introduced. So it was a wonderful collegiate environment, and I thrived on that. And I think that has helped me. Now, did I come across gender-based discrimination? Yes, I can reflect on those times. I stand with my husband in a queue at Heathrow Airport. My passport says Professor Gunasekara. He gives the passport to the checking-in counter young woman. She checks him in, looks at him and says, excuse me, sir, where's the other gentleman? He says, that was my wife. And then on a later occasion, I still remember that when I went into the Vice Chancellor's office, it took my office helper 1 week before he stopped calling me sir. He kept saying, sir, sir, sir. And after 1 week, he suddenly decided to call me madam. And then when I went to the immigration department with my youngest daughter, was traveling with me, and I went with my application, he looked at me and said, but madam, we need your husband's salary. And I said, I don't know my husband's salary, but I looked in my handbag and said, here, I used to carry my salary sheet in my handbag for various purposes. And I said, here's my salary sheet. He said, no, madam, we can't accept yours. We need your husband's. And then I realized, why is it that our passport says, who's your grandfather, great-grandfather, who's your grandfather, who's your father? And the umbilical cord is tied to the mother. So those were my experiences of gender-based discrimination. And I have to say, the reality, therefore, for me was very different. My growth in the profession, my work and research. But it was my work and research into the law that gave me a profound understanding of the realities that many women face in this country. And therefore, in my research, I did much to understand that and to see how law policy reform could impact women's lives. And that is why in some areas it has given me great satisfaction with some of my research. For example, nationality law, my published research in the area of maintenance, my published research in the area of sexual violence, ultimately in a supportive policy environment, saw the light of day as legal documents and acts. So in that sense, I would say, yes, we have a current environment of a male-dominated profession, which is perhaps why you are celebrating this with women lawyers today. But the question is, what then, why then, and what now? Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Next, I will speak to Ms. Demoni De Silva. Ms. De Silva, good evening.
Good evening to Shani. Let me congratulate the seminars committee on achieving the milestone of 175 webinars, and also thank the Bar Association and its president and secretary. The question I think that you're asking is, why did I decide on law?
Law. Yes, that's right, madam.
Well, that's a good question. And it's one that I have actually never thought about. Because law happened, as Justice Fernando said, when we were in school.
Did anyone inspire you?
Not necessarily, because I come from a background of lawyers, both from my maternal and paternal side, judges and lawyers. But in school, the ambitions changed from time to time based on things we saw, based on things we experienced. And I recall after many of my friends went on AFS calls and came back, classmates, of wanting to have a career where I could travel. And soon after I finished my A-levels, I started thinking on those lines. And then my mother, she had other ideas. She, as I said, comes from a family of lawyers and judges. So she got my uncle, who's a lawyer, to collect an application from law college and to deliver it home. And then she said, why don't you fill this and just see what happens? So I was not at all interested, because I was more interested in other stuff. And I was studying computer at the time. I was teaching elocution because I was studying for my higher exams in speech and drama. So I was pretty engaged. Then I also had an ambition of becoming an announcer. It was a very big ambition at the time, which of course I achieved before I left law college. So then she finally struck a deal with me, and she said, all right, I'm just simply asking you to fill it and to send off the application. If you get the opportunity to sit for the exam, you sit for the exam, then you make the decision of what you want to do, whether you want to study law or whether you want to do something else. So that was not much to do. So I just filled the application, and I was called for the exam, sat for the examination, and I was selected. That was a very momentous occasion, because by then I had the day the letter came from law college was also the day that I had a job offer. So it was time for my mother to strike another deal with me. So she said, this is just 4 years of your life. And those 4 years will fly. When you pass out, you have a qualification. You're more mature. You're more knowledgeable. You'll be able to decide which direction you want to steer your life. So my mother, not being a lawyer, she was very, very persuasive, and she had very good persuasive skills. So I thought, okay, why not? I'll just go there and see, check it out and see whether I like it. And if not, then I can always do something else. So the first year I took everything very lightly. Studied law, made a lot of friends, and had a good time. But the wake-up call came to me in my intermediate year, because a batch previous to us, they had their results released, and only very, very few had passed. Extreme, like something around the 30s, if I remember correctly, from a big batch. And that was kind of the turning point in my thinking, because I didn't want to fail in anything. And I was thinking, if I don't take this seriously and study really hard, I might also fall into that category of failures and having to repeat exams or go out as a failure. So I took to law very seriously, found it extremely fascinating, extremely stimulating, and very challenging. And so once I passed out from law college, My mom didn't have to make any more deals with me. It was destiny, it was kismet. I had found what I wanted to do, and there was no other career for me then. So it was law, and it has since been law.
Did your mother inspire you to join the Attorney General's department, or was it?
No, that was my father. So my mother was the inspiration to join the law college, and it was my father who wanted to get me into the Attorney General's department because he was a police officer. So he had a lot of contact with prosecutors. He gave evidence in courts. And so he just said, why don't you, now that you're doing law, why don't you think about getting into the Attorney General's department? But again, because by then I was, as I told you, I was working part-time and at SLBC, I was doing other stuff, teaching, and everything was very fascinating to me. So I told him, let me first see what I can achieve with all the other stuff that I'm doing, and then maybe I'll take a call. I have some more time. I have more exams to pass, and then that's the way finally that I sort of changed my mind and then decided if you want me to tell the story now or maybe later of how I came to join the Attorney General's department.
That is okay. You can go ahead, madam.
How it happened is that we had a lot of lecturers who were from the Attorney General's department at Law College. And when we interacted with them, they always spoke about the experiences that they had. Then also, when I passed out from Law College, I joined the chambers of Mr. Tivanka Vikramasinghe, who was also a former officer of the Attorney General's department. Then after his demise, I joined Deshamanya Ranjit Abe Surya, who was a former director of public prosecution. So he would regale us with all his experiences, became very inspired. And then around that time, there was a murder case. And I remember going to the magistrate's court to watch the non-summary inquiry. And that was a first-hand experience of what a prosecutor does. So then I came out with my friend and I told her, I think my father is right. This is where I actually need to go. So the first opportunity I got, I wanted to apply. So I had two very close relations who were sitting judges of the Supreme Court at the time. So I went to them and I said, okay, I have this idea. What do you think I should do? Because all my other relations were in the private bar and all were encouraging me to join the private bar. In fact, my uncles were sending me bail applications and other cases which they wanted me to do. So then they said, look, this, as Professor Savitri Gunasekara said, they said, look, this profession is male dominated. Attorney General's department is male dominated. You must have that conviction and you must have the courage to take your career path right to the top if you join. Don't join and then come out. If you join, don't deprive another person of that opportunity which you're taking. So make use of it and work with one mind to reach somewhere in your career. So then I, through my friends, the seniors of Law College were already in the Attorney General's department. So they told me that applications were being called, in the sense not that they were actually called the way we do it now, but they said there were vacancies. So I immediately rushed and handed over a CV. That's all I did, just a CV. And then I was summoned for the interview. And I faced the interview. But unfortunately, it didn't. I was told that there were 5 vacancies and they were looking for 5 males. My luck, whilst the interviews were over and they were waiting to do the recruitments, one of the female officers resigned from the Attorney General's department. So then they decided, okay, there's a vacancy for a female officer. So why not the next person? That's me. So that's how I came to be. So I would say joining the department is also another, is act of, I don't know, it's fate, I think, because so many things were stacked against me going into the department. But then it worked out that I did get in, and I was the 7th female at the time. Justice Muldu Fernando was one of the 7. And I was number 98, and there were 7 females and 91 males in the Attorney General's department. And today I look back at where the Attorney General's department is, and we have almost equal numbers of male and female officers now.
That's good to know, madam. Thank you. Next, I will speak to Ms. Chamantha Veerakone. Good evening, madam. Mrs. Unambu, can you unmute, please?
Okay.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening to Shani. Permit me to first thank the Bar Association, the President and the Secretary of the Bar Association and the Webinars Committee for all these webinars. 175 is a very good achievement, and also for inviting me for this particular webinar. I do feel honored. Now, Tushani, I suppose your question to me is the same that you posed to the other panelists. Right.
Yes.
So why I chose law? Actually, I did not choose law. I was only 17 or 18 years of age, just after A-levels. Throughout school, I had always wanted to do English honors at Peradeniya campus, purely because I loved literature, and also Peradeniya campus because of the exciting stories that my parents used to relate or talk about of their life at Peradeniya. So then after A-levels, I got fairly good results, which would get me into the law faculty. My father suggested, why don't you give as your first option? I think we had to give 3 options we could give for the applications after to the university. In filling the application, my father suggested, why don't you give as your first option the law faculty and then make English at Peradeniya your second option. So, well, I held my father in high esteem. I did not argue on that. So I said, okay. And he said, well, if you do law, you will have so many options, you know, on what you choose to do thereafter. So just try it, go ahead and see. So I was then selected to the law faculty. In the law faculty, of course, I enjoyed my studies. I was involved in the Students' Council also. I was a member of that. So that bit of life also, university life, I did have some experience. So my university experience was something I enjoyed. I enjoyed the law there. But I think what is more relevant in relation to me is why I stayed in the law. Now, I stayed in law not because my father, not purely because my father was a lawyer, but because I found the law to be fascinating. The variety was something that I really found extremely interesting, because after taking oaths or before taking oaths, I apprenticed in Dr. Colvinar de Silva's chambers. So there I was exposed to the criminal law. and also fundamental rights law. So I found the public law aspect extremely fascinating. Then with my father, I did various kinds because he did everything. So I had experience in public law, original criminal courts. Also, I attended, though I don't do criminal law now. Labor matters, commercial matters, civil law matters. So that the variety, at consultations, one client would be like some land dispute or something, the next client would be for a criminal matter. The third one would be in fundamental rights. So that was something it really fascinated me. So that made me stay on in law. And I think what made me stick to the private bar was also that variety and also the independence and the freedom I had. So that was also something which was very valuable to me, that I didn't have any bosses, so to speak. So that is how I continued to be in law. I never really thought of joining any other branch of the law even.
Madam, what do you think of being in the private profession?
You're not clear,
Yes.
Tushani.
Yes. Madam, what do you think of being in the being in private practice and this concept of a male-dominated profession? Did you face any challenges, or what is your personal opinion about it?
Well, at the time I took oaths, it was highly male dominated. It still is, but I think in the coming 10-20 years, it might be even female dominated, because I see when I went to the law faculty for a lecture a few years back, I was told that 80% of the students were females. Yeah, so I think this would change. But of course, I did not have any difficulties in practice. The courtroom, actually, the seniors, the judges, they were all very good in the sense, like they never made me feel as if I was a lesser being or that I could not match up to other counsel. And I think from the beginning, I was opposed to very senior counsel. So, and even those counsel, they were also very good with me. They didn't treat me as, some little junior, female junior who couldn't do much or anything like that. They treated me with respect. And I must say, your senior, Mr. Faiz Mustafa, whom I respect a lot, he was very encouraging to me. And so were the judges, especially the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal judges. They were extremely encouraging. So, and at that time, Tushani, only except for maybe the 6 or 7 females in the Attorney General's department, there weren't female counsel in the private bar other than for Miss Maureen Seniviratna PC and Miss Manori Muttetudam. So I think Miss Maureen Seniviratna and Mrs. Muttetudam, they were the trailblazers. I remember Miss Seniviratna telling me that she faced many difficult challenges. But, I did not experience that. So I must say the seniors were very good. So were the judges. I have had a couple of experiences with just a couple of judges who, did not even want to listen to me in the original court. So that I thought was maybe because I was a very young female lawyer. But that I don't take it seriously because just a couple of instances and it ended with that. So, but the problem to Shani that we females have females practicing in the private bar have is that the public view this as a male dominated area and that this is a man's job.
Yes.
Arguing in court, all that is a man's job. So the public would always prefer, given the choice, they would always prefer to go to a male lawyer rather than a female lawyer. So in fact, I mentioned this once to Justice Mark Fernando. At that time, he was on the Supreme Court bench. And now he was a person who was very interested in the development of the law, how the juniors get going and all that sort of thing. So I mentioned this to him and he told me, Chamanta, to get over that, just one or two of you being good is not going to help. That won't solve the problem for the other young ladies. You all must ensure that there will be a lot of good lady lawyers in the profession. It is then that the public will accept it as a normal thing where whether they go to a woman or a man, it doesn't make a difference. So that is correct. Just one or two, just a few women lawyers being good on their feet will not make the public think that women also can do this as well as any man. So I think the problem is there. Within the courtroom and in the profession amongst colleagues, I have not faced difficulties purely for the reason that I am a woman.
That's
okay.
Thank you, madam. Okay, thank you, madam. Next, I will go to Justice Murthu Fernando, madam.
Yes, to Shani.
Yes. Madam, what made you join the judiciary? When you joined the Attorney General's department, did you even think of joining the judiciary at that time, or did it come later on over the years?
As I told you earlier, I think everything has been not by choice. Something has brought me here. I do not know what it is. Maybe luck or maybe the grace of God, I am here today. Well, when I joined the Attorney General's department, as I told you, it was also sheer coincidence. I just came and then actually when Indika said it only, I remembered, yes, we had only a very few, I just counted them. We had only 5 lady lawyers at that time in the department. And well, and also I must emphasize and I must add at this time, as personally speaking from myself, I had no discrimination whatsoever from any officer in the department. Similarly, when I appeared in court, never was there been any discrimination to me personally with regard to my gender. So gender is something which I do not even consider as an imbalance or whatever in my field, because I have never felt it. And I have been quite happy, quite confident, I have been quite okay with that factor. In the Attorney General's department also, well, as I started as district court. I was sent to the district court at the beginning. When I joined, I started my practice, we did not have cooperation work. So we had only little work, but I was more onto, as I told you, advice, research onto that side. My seniors and even the former Chief Attorney General, Mr. Siva Pasupati, personally picked me on to do his research work. So I had the advantage of visiting almost all these libraries. There's the law library at Halsdorf, legal draftsman's, University of Colombo, UN library, and I was sent to all these places and even to archives to get material, because those days we had to do our own research, no Google, no internet, no web, nothing. We had to do our own work. So I used to go, I was sent actually to these places to do my work. So it was very happy. In a way, I may not have been traveling the length and breadth of Sri Lanka prosecuting, but I was quite happy. And in a way, now when I think back, I think being in Colombo was also an advantage, because some of these eminent counsel about whom we have only heard, I was able to see them. Now I could recollect Mr. Eric Amarasinghe, Mr. Navaratna Raja, Mr. B.J. Fernando, and Mr. Mark Fernando also, when he was practicing as a lawyer in the Colombo Commercial District Court #1. I could remember them. And maybe that was one reason which gave us the encouragement and the ability, and also to see what's happening. And Mr. Raja Gundasekara, Mr. H.L.D. Silva, I mean, I think I have had the privilege of listening to them, and maybe every day kind of we were in court. So that way, that made me quite happy with the legal studies I was doing, and I continued to be in the department. I had no dreams. I had I did not think that I should one day be a judge or something like that. I was an ordinary counsel doing ordinary work, running here and there, but I was handling quite a lot of work. That much I can tell you. It is nothing but hard work and perseverance that have brought me up here. Nothing more than that. I did not have any relatives in the legal profession, nor in the department. I was on my own. So it's sheer work and work alone. And even when in the department, the judiciary was, no, it didn't attract me at all. I can remember one day, one of our attorney generals called and asked me, High Court, there is an opening. Are you willing to send the application? I said, no, AG, I'm not interested. And I came back. Court of Appeal also, I was not interested. And maybe when it came to the Supreme Court also, I must say, this, it's a path, it's a different path. There is a special path from the department to the Supreme Court. Well, the path was closed for some time. And well, I don't know, you have heard this saying to say, no, that somebody comes from the bottom and push you. Maybe that's what happened to me. It was not that I climbed the ladder. Somebody may have come and pushed you and said, send your application. If you're not interested, you're going to block the others. So that's how my application went. I did not pursue. I did not go behind anybody. And one fine day, when I was at home, and that is also the story to be told, when I was at home getting ready for my son's birthday, cooking basically, a call came to say, look here, you have been selected, come now. I was given 1 hour to come and take my oaths. So that's how I came to the profession. It was never an ambition, never a dream. Well, I was pushed there, I may say. And here I am today, quite happy where I am.
And enjoying it.
Of course, I must say, I'm really enjoying my work, and it's quite different to my life in the department. This gives me quite a different, a much more multifaceted look into the law. And well, as you see, we are in a pedestal and we can see everything. And maybe in the same way, we can see, and quite a lot of things which we have not done, not done in the department, land law, and so many other areas which we have to now look into. And I do really enjoy still studying and going over the case laws, case reports, and attending to my work. So basically, as far as I'm concerned, as I told you, no dreams, no ambitions, sheer work has brought me here, and no discrimination. I must emphasize, I think I will not be doing justice if I do not say that. No discrimination whatsoever. Even presently, I do not feel in any way that I have been discriminated. Well, I don't know why, but I have never felt it. So true, these taglines are there about all these gender-based, this and that and all that stuff. But as far as speaking for myself, it has never been an issue.
Thank you. Next,
I hope you answered your question.
Yes, madam. Thank you. Next, I will go to Professor Gunasekara. Madam, what advice would you like to give the younger generation, madam?
Well, I think before I do that, I'd like to share some thoughts on what has been discussed with regard to why people go into the law, because I think this is relevant for this kind of discussion that you're having. So can I do that?
Yes, madam.
Can I do that, please?
Yes, madam.
Yes. So I think it's very interesting that we see a contrast. We see a contrast between my life experience, Justice Muruthu Fernando's, and Miss Indika, Honorable Indika De Muniz. It indicates that Justice Fernando's and my life, in a sense, go on a certain kind of track, and I don't know whether there's generational issue in relation to the difficulty that at the point of entrance, Miss De Silva had, because I think that points to a reality which I think is there. And I do hope that Justice Muruthu Fernando, in her jurisprudence, will probably look at the Perlecati case on sexual harassment in the law and probably shift her stance a little to say, though my life has been very privileged, I've never faced discrimination, there could be other women who do so, and then give us some very good jurisprudence on the the kind of the inherent discrimination. I also want to reflect on the fact that when I joined law, like many of you, it was a parental kind of interest. My beloved father said, "Why not law? It's good for you." I used to do oratorical, contests and things in school. Why don't you do it? And I did it, but I had a path, either law college or university. And unlike in Ms. De Silva's case, for me, the path was university education. And maybe that made a difference, because once I went into university education, it was an exposure to the law, the jurisprudence, the richness of the legal tradition that this country had, which, like for some of you who have done university education, I hope it was your experience too, exposed me to the kind of ideas, thinking in a fine intellectual environment, which made me feel that law was a central discipline. That, of course, was reinforced because I have an academic background in my family. Also a beloved husband who was known Magister Magistorum. You referred to him, Justice Fernando, as a lawyer who stood by ethics, values, and a deep understanding and wisdom, like Justice Mark Fernando, like Justice Samarasinha, some of our great judges, and some of you on the bench today, in the jurisprudence and the dissolution of Parliament Court. Great ideas, which then made you feel you have to stay the course. And of course, academia, giving time for other work. I noticed that both Justice Fernando and Justice De Muniz De Silva, President's Council, are in office. Academics don't have that obligation, and they can work from home now. They can also participate in others. So for me, those were areas which made me understand that academia was important And it's important both from a personal sense. I too saw practitioners, and I want to reflect, as you have done, on President's Council Maureen Senaviratna, Surya Vikramasinghe, and Manori. They were the people whom we knew at that time, who were lawyers, who went into court, and who sustained this interest in law as something for the delivery of justice in the community. And I think today is an occasion to think of them and to pay tribute to them and say they were pioneers in the legal profession, not just for women, but for the legal profession. So staying in the law for me then and coming into the law was connected in terms of ideas. But the coming in was through an academic path. The staying in also was an academic path. And the continuing to staying in it is also the belief in the importance and the critical importance of law and justice in a community. So in that context, I'd like to respond to what you said, which is what is the advice to young lawyers, young women lawyers. I would like to think that the Bar Association has given leadership in this very venture to suggest that you have a community of lawyers who think as lawyers, not because they're women lawyers, not because they're academics, but with a constant awareness that this is of central importance to our country. And so I don't want to say this is for the young lawyers or the older lawyers. I think we have shown through the Bar Association itself and this panel that intergenerational connectivity is important. And I think this is very important to forge belief in the law, in the system of administration of justice. And even as we have Justice Fernando and Ms. Devani Silva, a senior judge of our Apex Court and a senior prosecutor, I think we need all recognize reality. And that reality must be a recognition, not just for women lawyers, but for all lawyers. That is, there's a serious credibility gap in the belief of our citizens in justice, in the administration of justice. In fact, there's deep disenchantment. Maybe there were the lawyer jokes in the past, but I remember when I was Vice Chancellor, a colleague did a all-island research on youth. And it struck me at that time that one of the things that came through was that the single institution that the youth lived in was a judiciary. That was significant. So today we have this gap in confidence, and I think it is for lawyers and the bar to address that, to recognize the reality and do what they can to address the address that issue, and also give a sense of professional engagement with constitutionalism. The need for democratic governance in a context of constitutionalism. The rejection of autocracy, dictatorship, because a model of governance in this country has been parliamentary democracy. We see it as dysfunctional, but there's also a core understanding of the concept of democracy as opposed to autocracy. And I think for lawyers in Sri Lanka, or lawyers, it's extremely important to stay committed to that and do whatever they can to ensure not distrust and a sense of a democratic deficit that will take us on the path of autocracy, but rather belief in constitutionalism, the rule of law, and democratic governance. I think all lawyers, if we commit ourselves to that, I think this is very important. And I'm happy to say that the Bar Association today is giving that leadership. It's time then that, like all other professions, we sink our political differences, but rather close ranks and stand for what we want. This, I think, is extremely important. And our professions, after all, the doctors, you saw it in the pen, so the engineers, and so the architects. So why not lawyers? So I think this communitarian sense of the bar, lawyers as a profession, is very important. And so I would like to conclude with the importance of your question of what I have to say. The critical importance of legal education. I'm in academia, and most of you are in the profession. But if you look at the problems of our country, it's very important that many other countries which inherited a colonial bifurcation of legal education into law college and academia have closed the gap. I cannot think of any country which maintains this difference. Now we do that. And we have the law college, and we have 5 separate universities teaching law. However, if the profession is to move forward, the profession must engage in the in legal education, in the quality of legal education, the kind of lawyer who is passing out, the kind of person who's joining the bar, the kind of person who is becoming a judge. If that does not happen, you will produce large cohorts of graduates from the university. Some may go into law college, and the quality of legal education will be seriously affected. I have concerns, myself personally, having been in legal education. I have concerns about that. And I remember many years ago when we had a committee on legal education, I asked that question from the late Hari Jayawardena, H.W. Jayawardena, QC. Why is the bar not interested in legal education, like in other professions? And he said, well, you know, legal education for us is through the Council of Legal Education and the judges of the Supreme Court. Well, today, there's a concern. The judges, the Council of Legal Education, and practicing lawyers and the bar should be interested in legal education. And I'm sorry to say, recently, several of my colleagues and I, we joined together to recraft the Open University Bar, Open University Law course, which I myself pioneered many light years ago. We did a lot of work pro bono. And today, sadly, that program and the leadership given by a very senior academic has been thrown out. And in that place, we have another one, which is a perpetuation of the old program. Now, these are issues which are of central concern to the bar. And I know that over the weekend, there will be a big conference in legal education. And I hope that it will not be confined to the universities, but that the bar and the Bar Association and the voice of judges and the voice of lawyers, practicing lawyers like you, will fertilize the discourse. And we will have in this country law schools that can produce the kind of lawyer that this country desperately needs. We are at a crucial juncture. Our own beloved country is hitting the headlines on issues of governance, on a collapsed economy. In the world, we have multilateralism challenged, and we have multilateral institutions in a kind of mode which many of us cannot understand. And then we have, sadly, bilateralism, political decision-making, and we all watch and witness as the Ukraine is turned to ashes. This is a defining moment for us and for us lawyers, because we must know that autocracy must be resisted through democracy. And it is the task of lawyers, judges, and people like us, both men and women, to enthrone democracy and not reject it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Next, I will go to Ms. Demuni De Silva. Ms. De Silva, what would you like to give your personal experience, what you have gained at the department? What would you like to tell the younger generation of our lawyers?
Well,
Any skills need?
I think the younger generation, if we look at the lifestyle that they have, I think they are kind of more used to everything happening fast. Their lifestyles are fast, knowledge, they are fast. Everything can happen at the touch of a button, click of the phone, and there's the internet, websites, and information highways. So I think what they should actually learn to do is to be very patient, in the sense that success will not come quickly.
Overnight.
Yes. You have to wait for it. You have to grab the opportunities that come your way and turn them to your advantage. Do not lament saying, if I get something better, then I will do it. I sit in interview panels, selecting lawyers, selecting officers for the department, and very often the candidates say, I want to join the Attorney General's department because I want to learn. I want to, because I heard that this is a place where I will have more exposure. But that's not true, because if you want to learn, it doesn't matter where you are, you will learn. It's just that you need to do it yourself, because the law college and the universities have taught you. But from there onwards, it's up to you that you keep up with the law, that you keep up with the developments that take place. You should not be afraid of failure, because you will not succeed all the time. The failure you must put down to experience and build on it. So those are my words of wisdom, if I can call it, to junior officer lawyers in the profession. It's a profession that is steeped in tradition. You have to respect those traditions. You have to learn to respect your seniors. Even today, when I went to court, I was in a resume matter. I had to start the first case in the morning, but another matter was taken up. There was space at the bar table, but immediately I took my books and I went and sat behind, because I wanted to give the lawyers the freedom to move around and argue cases. So those are little things that people will not teach you, but you have to see and learn. So my advice to young lawyers is, don't be in a hurry to get to the destination. Enjoy the view as you go.
Thank you, madam, for those words. Then Ms. Unangwa, what would you say to our younger generation of lawyers?
Well, to the younger generation, to the young lawyers,
From your personal experience.
I would say that number one would be hard work. There is no alternative to hard work. You have to work hard to achieve anything. Maybe it's not only in law, in whatever. So that is number one. And when you go into court, never go into court without going through your brief. My late senior, Dr. Colvin R. De Silva, told me that even at that time, those were his last few years at the bar. He said before he goes to court, he would read the brief cover to cover. And the sections of whatever law, he would always read at least one time the entire law. And I think the sections on murder and culpable homicide, he would have gone through so many times. They were tattered also in his penal code. He would still read that each time a criminal case he would do. So that is the kind of hard work that even at that stage, such an eminent lawyer put in. So these young lawyers must know that they have to work hard. There are no shortcuts. Now, today we find when we are in court, some young lawyers, this is not to criticize them, but some young lawyers don't even know for whom they are appearing. You know, and I find the judges, some
Getting
of the
annoyed.
judges do pull them up. Yes,
Yes.
rightly so.
Oh.
But there I fault the seniors. Seniors should never send their juniors just throwing a brief at them in the morning. And they say, just go and do it. You know, they must at least give a little bit of time to these juniors, or the juniors must ask for the brief.
Proper instructions.
Proper instructions. So these are things that they have to learn. And also, juniors must know even as apprentices. Now, apprenticeship is a time that you learn. They must observe when they go to court. They must observe the seniors making applications. They must observe the judges. They must observe how cases are being argued. That's how they learn. Nobody actually taught us once we came into practice. Even during apprenticeship, we learned. We kind of learned on our own by observing and by our hard work. So that is something that juniors have to know, and we have some very smart juniors I have observed. So it's not something that they can't do. And also they have to stick to the traditions, the principles, the values. Those are very, very important. There are lots of criticisms, complaints that juniors now are not like those days and various things like that. But that, I think, is something across the board, across society, not only in our profession. So in the law, I think not only the juniors, all of us, as Professor Gunasekara said, we can all contribute so much to society. You know, especially times like this, we can see where in what instances we can contribute. So juniors also can do it. Young lawyers can do it. So I would tell them to be alert, to be observant, work hard. This is a profession where you can help yourself and help society, help others. So it's a worthwhile profession, an honorable profession, and a profession which is rewarding if you engage in it in the proper way. So that's what I would advise the juniors.
Thank you, madam. I will now go to Justice Murthy Fernando.
Yes, to Shani.
Yes, madam, what would your advice be to our young generation of lawyers?
Well,
What would you expect from them?
Basically, main ingredient that I will expect is honesty, and honesty alone. If you're honest to your client, to court, to your seniors, I think the battle is half won. What happens is when the honesty goes out of the scene, then only all the other matters come up. When you come with the brief, if you're not ready, be honest and say, I'm not ready for these reasons. That will be the best. If you do not wish to say that, as I think Samantha said it, there are counsels who come, and I mean, it's pathetic sometimes when they don't know for whom they are appearing, that they don't know what the case is about. then only you think that, you know, the profession, there is a kind of it's going down. We cannot let that happen. We have to upgrade this. I think there's some disturbance, is there? Well, that's what we ought to keep up the profession, because yes, this is a profession where, you know, the integrity and honesty is one of the main core ingredients that have to be done. Whether it is a senior, junior, female, male, it's immaterial. You have to be honest. You be honest to your client, be honest to court, be honest to your senior. And also, as was the general understanding, basically we learn on our feet. We learn in court. Today when we come, you see certain people, juniors, or they are discussing among themselves. They kind of are not, I mean, they have forgotten that it's a court of law. It's a court of law. It's like a temple of justice. That is what it was told earlier. You go, whether it's a temple or a religious place, I mean, there's some sanctity. You are silent. When you go there, you kind of, there is some respect that has to be. So you have to follow those the guidelines, those traditions have to be followed. So if you follow them, and if you're honest, and if you know exactly, if you study your brief, then the half the battle is won. I mean, that is what I could tell the juniors. I mean, I love to see the juniors in court. I mean, true, I don't think I would offend the seniors, but I would love to see the juniors in court. I like to see young lady lawyers appearing in front of me, but very rarely. I mean, maybe this male-dominated profession we have, but the passing out rate is basically 50-50 or even more than that. I think about 60-40. But maybe they go on to other areas. They practice. They don't come to practice the law. They go as legal officers. Some for them is just only a qualification, a basic qualification. Well, some of them are just housewives at home, or some they go on to other areas, or they never sight a courthouse. There may be lawyers who have never cited a courthouse, but the ones who are in court, well, then you can say it's male dominated. But among the male, like Samantha said, I think Miss Maureen Senaviratna was one lady who was there every day in court when we used to come appear in the Court of Appeal. And Samantha was one, and others, I think Manori, I have seen her, not that often, but I have seen her. But then I think the other two ladies who were running around were you and Tushani, you and Faisamaka, who were running around, and we didn't have many lady lawyers. And even now there are a few, but they carry books. They don't address court. And well, I like to see them appearing. I like to them seeing arguing cases, but just coming to court and arguing is not what it is. They have to know their brief. If they know their brief, if they know their law, then it's done. So that's my advice to the juniors, whether it is ladies or that is immaterial. Be honest. Integrity is one of the most, or rather I could say, the pillars of justice. You should have your integrity, be honest, and then you have done your duty to your society also. This is because, I mean, you're safeguarding, or you're representing a lawyer, representing a litigant before court, and by that you are kind of also, this is also a way of looking after the society. So this is not something, some drama that is happening in Halsdorf. No, it's not like that. It is also something of, I mean, whether you argue a case on fundamental rights of equality, or equality of gender, or promotion, or recruitment, or whatever. I mean, it will have ripples throughout the public sector as to how recruitment ought to be done, or promotions ought to be given. So in one way, in that way, we are kind of, should be for the betterment of the society also. So actually we are not in a on some marble towers in Halsdorf, doing our own work. We are to a world of our own. No, in way we are reforming the society also. So my advice to the lady lawyers and to all the young lawyers is, don't be scared, don't be frightened. Come to court, sit and watch. Off your phones, off your internet, iPads, watch what's happening in court. Very recently, I must tell you, last week, there was a president's counsel who was in court. He is not a regular, but who comes to court and a highly academic of excellence. He came and said, I was happy, I was there. He was in before me and he had one argument and there was another argument that was taken. And he said, I was happy to be in court. And I learned, it kind of, my thoughts on this particular law was reflected upon by listening to these arguments. So if a person of that nature, ideas and understanding of the law can be reflected by them, it is, even for the juniors, it will be a great blessing, because this is not a profession where you learn by only reading books. This is not a profession like that. You have to come to court, and the ethics and the etiquetteness is also one of the main factors. Attire is also a factor, your attire to court. And also, there are days when you see some of the junior lawyers seated in the front row of the bench, of the bar. We have only about 8 seats and some are being occupied. So these are, somebody has to tell them that this is not what it ought to be like. But they don't know. Nobody tells them. They don't observe. When they come to court, they just sit there and wait. I'm not finding fault. But this is constructive criticism. You may take it as like that. Especially telling the juniors, come to court, sit at the back and watch the proceedings, learn from what it is, and that will take you wherever to reach the pinnacle. I believe I answered your question. Tushani? Did I? Tushani?
Thank you, madam. Yes, you did. Thank you. Yes, madam. Professor Gunasekara, I would like to pose the same to you. Professor Gunasekara.
Yes, what is your question?
Yes, madam. What advice would you give the young generation?
I thought I answered that. I thought I answered that in my previous response. I did answer that, Tushani. So I don't want to repeat myself.
Okay.
Yes, I answered that.
Else you would like to add, Ms. Gunasekara?
Yes.
That's right. No, anything else you would like to add, Professor Gunasekara?
Well, not really to add, except that you see all this discussion that has in this webinar. I'm not a practitioner. I'm not in court. And a lot of it has been on the nuts and bolts of practice, ethics in court. And as Justice Muruthu Fernando, I think, made a very good point when she said that there is this whole value base sometimes which is not understood, which is not shared by a new generation. And it is very important to have that connectivity between the richness of a legal tradition and what it is today. And I think that's important. And I would also reinforce that, because where you see breakdown of ethics, integrity, honesty in the profession, that surely will destabilize the contribution of, will destabilize the profession, increase its lack of credibility in the public mind, and ultimately have a very debilitating effect. So I would agree with that. But at the same time, I would also like to suggest that in the legal profession, more than any others, because of its unique position to contribute to governance, to accountable governance, to the way in which the profession connects with the public, I would like to see much greater engagement by practicing lawyers by judges also in their jurisprudence, and prosecutors too, engaging with what the public thinks of the administration of justice. To me, that is a gap today, and it wasn't always so. That's why I was trying to refer when I spoke on then and now, because in my life experience, as I see my life experience reflected, it's some of the things that have gone right and some of the things that have gone wrong in our country. And we all love our country. So I would seek for the profession a much greater engagement with issues of public concern than focusing essentially both for the present and for the future on the nuts and bolts of practice. I believe it's important. It's important for, and I think Justice Murthy has brought out that very clearly. And I think I'm glad she brought that out because it is speaking to a reality and we see shifts. So my final conclusion at this seminar would be that, as I said, I come from an academic background, but I've had the privilege of associating with a spouse who was a frontline practitioner, with judges who were contributed to jurisprudence that any country could be proud of, colleagues in the profession who are practitioners. So I don't see, in a sense, I've never thought of myself as an academic who's in an ivory tower of books. No, I've thought of myself as a lawyer, but as a lawyer who has not had the privilege and the experience of practicing in court, but has been deeply engaged with the functioning of the law in society. And I would ask that the Bar Association, judges, prosecutors, practitioners understand that we are in crisis with regard to the administration of justice and accountable governance in this country. And it is for the bar collectively to drop aside differences of race, caste, politics, adversarial, and to have a common voice. This has been done in many countries of South Asia. And I would ask that that is what the young lawyers of today and all lawyers should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gunasekara, for those words. I would like to thank our distinguished panel for taking part in this webinar despite their busy schedules. I would also like to congratulate and thank Mr. Rajiv Amasurya and his team very sincerely. Over to you, Shania.
Thank you, Ms. Machado. As Justice Murthy correctly said, this is not a profession that you learn by reading books, and that is why webinars such as these are invaluable to all of us. On behalf of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, the BASL Seminars Committee, I would like to thank Justice Murthy President's Counsel, Savitri Gunasekara, Honorable Indika Demuri De Silva, President's Counsel, Solicitor General, and Mrs. Chamantha Verakon Kunambua for this informative, inspiring, and insightful and valuable session. I, for one, am left extremely inspired, and I'm sure our wonderful audience this evening would also agree. Before we conclude today's session, I would like to invite the convener of the Seminars Committee and the Assistant Secretary of BASL, Mr. Prasinda Silva, to share with us his sentiments of gratitude.
Thank you, Shania. When we faced with an unprecedented challenge in 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic, with the novel idea of our Secretary, Mr. Rajiv Amasurya, the BASL webinar series was launched. Initially, this was started in single language, which then developed being conducted in all 3 languages. Thereafter, the webinar series in professional and career development and the latest webinar series beyond court practice was started. Conducting 175 webinars was really a challenging task, and the BASL Seminars Committee, headed by Mr. Rajiv Amasurya, where I am the convener and ably assisted by Mr. Pandula Vanayarachi, Mr. Ushan Uberatta, and Ms. Ann Devananda, the conveners, and also Ms. Nikini Mapitagama, who has been an important member of this team, successfully held these webinars running over a time span of nearly 2 years. By the BASL webinar series, we have reached out to all the members across the country as well as overseas. As a team, it was with great dedication and determination that we got this webinar series into place for the benefit of our members. The immense contributions made by the management committees of the BASL for the years 2020 and 2021, headed respectively by Mr. Kalinga Indrathista President's Council and Mr. Salih Piris President's Council. The seminars committee of the BASL, headed by the secretary, Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, the resource persons who have shared their wealth of knowledge and experience, including the eminent panel of this 175th webinar, all the compeers, the staff of the BASL, especially our CEO, Mrs. Surin Samarsekara, and our IT head, Mr. Sarang Hettiarachi, as well as our dear members and other viewers were instrumental to the success of this webinar series. I believe that the BASL webinar series has helped to enhance the knowledge of the viewers, especially our members, in various aspects, and that it will serve as a treasure trove to our members in the years to come. Thank you very much. May all of you have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Mr. Silva, for those gratitude, for the words of gratitude expressed. I would like to thank all of you who joined us through Zoom and YouTube, and for all your questions that have made this webinar an interesting one. Thank you, everyone. Good night.